The clock that froze time for kind kids. In the peaceful village of Lentonwood, nestled between rolling blue hills and golden fields, lived children who loved to play from sunrise to sunset. But none of them knew that hidden deep inside the tallest hill, known as Whispering Hill, there was an ancient clock tower that had not chimed in over 100 years. That was until Ellie, a curious girl with wild curls and a habit of helping everyone, followed a trail of glowing blue mushrooms during her walk home. The path led her to a hidden door made of oak, wrapped in ivy, and sealed with a symbol she had only seen in bedtime stories. As she gently pressed her hand to the door, it creaked open with a soft glow. Inside stood an old clock, towering high, its hands still and silent. Sitting by it was a tiny, wrinkled man with eyes that sparkled like stars. His name was Mr. Tiddlewick, and he had been waiting for someone like Ellie for a very long time. "You opened the door because your heart is pure," Mr. Tiddlewick said kindly. "And that means you may use the clock of kindness." Ellie blinked. "Use it? For what?" "To freeze time," he whispered. "But only when you do something truly good without expecting anything back." Just as he finished, the clock's hands began to move. Tick, 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 and then froze again. A soft chime echoed, and the entire world outside stopped. Leaves hung mid-air. Bees hovered silently above flowers. Everything was still. Ellie looked around in amazement. She had no idea what was happening, but somehow she knew this was only the beginning. Ellie stepped outside the clock tower and gasped. The world was completely silent. The wind no longer danced through the trees. A bird hung mid-flight like a painting in the sky. Even the river had frozen mid-ripple. Her footsteps echoed on the ground as she walked through the village square. She saw Mr. Bellamy frozen with a pie in one hand, and her little brother Ben paused mid-laugh on the swings. Everything had stopped, except her. Back at the hilltop, Mr. Tiddlewick appeared beside her in a blink. "You gave your last sandwich to a hungry squirrel this morning without telling anyone. That's what started the clock." Ellie looked amazed. "But it was just a squirrel." "A small act of kindness," he said, "done for no reward, carries more magic than you know." He handed Ellie a glowing pendant shaped like a clock hand. "This will light up when your kindness activates the spell again. You'll have 10 minutes each time the world pauses. Use them wisely, and never, ever try to trick the clock. It knows your true heart." As the sun reached the hilltop, the pendant dimmed. A breeze stirred. Birds chirped again. Time resumed its rhythm. Ellie blinked. The world had returned to normal, but everything inside her had changed, and she couldn't wait to tell her best friends, Max and Lila, about the secret clock on Whispering Hill. The next morning, Ellie rushed to meet her two best friends, Max, who always carried a magnifying glass in his pocket, and Lila, who could spot a lie faster than anyone. They sat beneath the old oak near the school swings as Ellie whispered everything: the glowing mushrooms, the frozen world, Mr. Tiddlewick, and the magical clock that only worked for acts of true kindness. Max's eyes lit up. "That sounds like something out of a legend. We have to see it." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure this isn't just one of your stories again?" But when Ellie pulled out the clock-shaped pendant and it glowed faintly in her hand, even Lila leaned closer. "I want to try," said Max. "Maybe if I help my grandpa carry firewood today, the clock will work for me too." "That's not how it works," Ellie warned. "You can't do it just to make time stop. Mr. Tiddlewick said the clock knows your heart." Still, Max was determined. That afternoon, he helped his grandfather, fed the neighbor's cat, and even shared his last 2 candies with his little brother. But the clock never chimed. His pendant stayed dark. Frustrated, Max muttered, "Maybe it only works for Ellie." From the shadows, something unseen stirred, something that watched the clock, waiting for someone to test its rules. Later that evening, Ellie returned to Whispering Hill, clutching her pendant. The stars twinkled overhead, and the clock tower stood still and silent, as if sleeping. Inside, Mr. Tiddlewick was polishing the brass gears with a cloth made of silver thread. "I think Max is upset," Ellie confessed. "He tried to be kind, but the clock didn't choose him." Mr. Tiddlewick looked up, his eyes filled with calm. "That's because he was hoping for a reward. Kindness done for praise is not kindness at all. It's a trade." He reached for a heavy leather book and opened it. The pages shimmered with golden ink. "There are only 3 rules you must never break," he said. "Rule 1. Only acts of pure kindness awaken the clock. Rule 2. The time you gain cannot be used to change fate, only to understand it. Rule 3. If someone uses the clock with a false heart, it will stop working. For everyone. Ellie's eyes widened. Everyone? Mr. Tiddlewick nodded. The clock is a gift, not a game. If even one person uses it with the wrong intention, it goes silent until it finds a new guardian. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves on Whispering Hill. Far below, Max stood near the bottom of the trail, his eyes fixed on the hidden door Ellie had described. And in the darkness, just beyond him, something old and cold began to awaken. The next morning, Max didn't show up for school. Ellie and Lila searched the playground, the bakery, even the riverside path, but he was nowhere to be found. By sunset, Ellie felt a strange pull in her pendant. It glowed faintly, tugging her toward Whispering Hill. She followed the path, heart pounding. When she reached the clock tower, the door was already open. Inside stood Max. His pendant, one he hadn't been given, hung from a chain of string around his neck. He stared at the clock, which now ticked backwards. "Max!" Ellie shouted. "What are you doing?" He turned slowly, his eyes wild with wonder. "It worked. I found a way to force the time to stop. I borrowed the chime key from the gears when you weren't looking. Mr. Tiddlewick didn't even notice." Ellie's heart sank. The room darkened as the pendants on her and Max's necks dimmed together. A low rumble echoed through the tower. Mr. Tiddlewick appeared behind the clock, his face pale. "You have broken the second rule. I just wanted to see what it felt like," Max muttered. "And now, the clock will sleep," Mr. Tiddlewick whispered, "for 100 days or 100 years." The gears screeched to a stop. A heavy silence fell. The glowing mushrooms outside flickered out. The clock of kindness had frozen itself. Lila, who had quietly followed Ellie, appeared in the doorway, shocked. Ellie clutched her dim pendant. "What do we do now?" Mr. Tiddlewick looked at them all. "Now, you must find a way to fix what was broken. Not with magic, but with truth." For days, the village of Lentonwood seemed colder, not by weather, but by spirit. Flowers drooped, laughter felt quieter, and the glowing pendant Ellie once wore now looked like plain glass. Max hadn't spoken to anyone. He stopped coming to the swings, skipped every walk with Ellie and Lila, and avoided Whispering Hill altogether. But Ellie couldn't let the clock stay broken, not when it had shown her so much beauty. One afternoon, Lila handed her a folded note. "He left this in my mailbox," she said. Ellie opened it carefully. Max's words were shaky. "I didn't mean to ruin everything. I just wanted to feel special too. I'm sorry. I wish I could undo it." Ellie looked at Lila. Maybe he can't fix the clock, but maybe he can fix himself. That evening, they met Max at the base of Whispering Hill. He looked nervous, holding a small box wrapped in paper made from birch bark. Inside was the chime key, the one he had stolen. "I want to return it," Max whispered. "I don't care if I ever stop time again." The hilltop wind stirred. Together, they entered the silent clock tower. Mr. Tiddlewick stood there, waiting. No words were spoken. Max walked forward, gently placed the key onto the gear where it belonged, and looked down. Then, something miraculous happened. The faintest light flickered within Ellie's pendant. Lila's eyes widened as her own necklace, one she'd never seen glow before, shimmered with a warm golden hue. The clock gave a soft click. Mr. Tiddlewick smiled. An honest heart and a true apology have their own kind of magic. With the chime key returned and Max's apology accepted, the clock began ticking once more, but slowly, as if it were healing. Mr. Tiddlewick gathered the 3 children around the heart of the tower, where the great pendulum swayed in a soft golden glow. "The clock has forgiven," he said, "but now it must test the 3 of you. Each of you will face one silent hour, a moment when time will stop, and only you will know. During that time, you must choose to act with kindness, when no one is watching and no one will remember, except the clock." The children exchanged nervous glances. "Can we fail?" Lila asked. Mr. Tiddlewick nodded solemnly. "Yes, and if you do, the clock will close its doors again, not out of anger, but to protect time itself." That night, Ellie's silent hour arrived first. She was on her way home when the pendant burned gently against her chest. The world froze. Leaves hung still. Crickets fell silent. Ahead of her, an elderly woman sat on a bench, mid-sneeze, her groceries scattered around her feet. Ellie sighed. No one would know if she helped, No one would clap or thank her. Still, she carefully picked up each apple, tucked the loaf of bread into the basket, and placed it all beside the woman's hands. Then, as a final touch, she removed her scarf and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. When time resumed, Ellie was already gone, turning the corner. But far above in the tower, the clock's minute hand shifted one tiny step forward. 1 silent hour had passed. 2 more awaited. 2 nights later, it was Lila's turn. She was walking her usual shortcut home when the familiar glow pulsed in her pendant. In an instant, everything froze. Birds mid-flight, a dog mid-leap, even the puddle she had just stepped over, perfectly still. She looked around. Okay, where's the test? There was nothing. No accidents, no one in trouble, just silence. Then she spotted it, a broken fence behind a neighbor's garden, one she usually ignored. Their chickens had always stayed close, but now, with time paused, one hen was halfway through the gap. No one would know if she left it. The bird might wander off tomorrow. Someone else might notice. But Lila sighed, set her school bag down, and gently guided the hen back inside the gate. She found an old piece of rope nearby and tied the fence closed. Not dramatic, she muttered, brushing off her hands, but it matters. The instant she turned away, her pendant shimmered once, then cooled. Time resumed, unnoticed by anyone. But high in the tower, the clock ticked again. A quiet confirmation. 2 silent hours had passed. Now, only one remained. And this one would not be easy. Max's silent hour arrived during a thunderstorm. He had gone out alone, walking by the river, letting the sound of rain wash over his thoughts. He didn't expect the pendant to glow again. Not after his mistake, but it did. In the blink of an eye, the world stood still. Raindrops hovered mid-air. The trees bent without swaying. The river's surface froze into glass. At first, Max thought there was no one to help. Then he spotted a boy, younger than him, halfway across the wooden bridge. The boy had dropped his backpack, and it teetered over the edge, stuck on a nail. Max groaned. Seriously? He didn't know the boy. No one was watching. He could just leave. It wasn't his problem, but something inside him shifted. He slowly crossed the slick bridge, careful with each frozen step, and reached for the bag. It was heavy, soaked through, but he yanked it up and placed it in the boy's arms. He even fixed the boy's shoelace, which had come undone mid-stride. When he stepped back, he felt nothing special, just rain hanging in the air and the steady beating of his heart. Then, the world moved again. The thunder rolled. The river flowed. The boy blinked, confused, looking down to find the bag in his arms and his shoes tied. Max stood at the far end of the bridge, soaked and quiet. High above, the clock's hands shifted into place. The test was complete. But in the shadows of Whispering Hill, something was stirring. The next morning, the village of Lentonwood seemed brighter, more alive than ever. The flowers bloomed with a new vibrancy. Laughter returned to the streets, and the sun shone with warmth, as if it, too, had been waiting for this moment. Ellie, Lila, and Max met in front of the clock tower once again, each wearing their pendants that now glowed with a soft, steady light. Mr. Tiddlewick stood before them, a rare smile on his face. The silent hours have passed, he said, and with them, the clock has healed. The clock tower's large pendulum swung steadily, ticking as it should, each second carrying the echoes of kindness that had been freely given. Ellie looked around at her friends. I think we learned something important. Lila nodded, still marveling at the tower's bright golden glow. Kindness doesn't always come with a reward, but it makes everything better. Max smiled for the first time in days. Yeah, I never realized how small actions, things no one else notices, can be the most important. Mr. Tiddlewick's eyes twinkled. You 3 have passed the final test, not just with your actions, but with your hearts. The clock now belongs to all of you. It is no longer just a tool to stop time. It is a reminder that kindness is what truly makes time special. The pendulum swung faster, its tick-tock echoing with the knowledge that time, in all its mysteries, was never as valuable as the moments shared with others. Remember, Mr. Tiddlewick said softly, the clock will always be here, and so long as it ticks, so too will your hearts. As the 3 friends left the tower, they didn't need to say much. The world around them felt different, new, full of possibility. Time was no longer something to be feared or hurried. It was something to treasure every fleeting moment. And from that day forward, the clock of kindness kept ticking, not just in the tower, but in every small act of love and care across the village of Lentonwood. And as for Ellie, Lila, and Max, they knew now that their adventures had only just begun.